Years ago, I got hit by a drunk driver. I had to do all the legwork to get fair compensation from the insurance companies. No attorney was really jumping out of their chair to try to help me. And then if you fast forward, past the drunk driver hitting me, me having to fight for like a year and a half to get compensated, got like hooked on like painkillers, and I just made bad decisions, as a result of that injury. That was like kind of my first catastrophic mess involving an attorney or attorneys. The attorney I ended up getting was a referral finally from a family member, and they're the ones who took it home. But man, it was really tough finding anybody, and when I did, I had to do a lot of work for a long time to get anything. After I bought my first house, 9 years after I bought my first house in DFW, I met a gal who needed to move out of a situation. I'm not going to expand on it, but she needed to move out. So I bought a larger house. I tried to rent out my first little house that I bought after college. In that process of buying the new house, that old house got stolen. I had agreed that I would sell that house in a transaction, but the way that these people stole the property, they just took a warranty deed and just put it at the back of a standard real estate contract that we had signed multiple times. So I had familiarity with this process already. We had signed the same agreement multiple times. The deal took, a while to get done. And unfortunately, on the third time around, they left off all the details of the first two contracts and they put a warranty deed on the back end just saying they wanted authorization to look at the property. And by getting that notarized, they got it signed at a Starbucks, and then the person who was doing this legal activity, the notary, took the documents away from where we got it signed so they could legally process the paperwork. They notarized it in the parking lot, signed it in the Starbucks, but it was under duress. There was like time constraints, and I was worried about losing, not only the money that I'd already put in, but also, both properties at that point. They were putting me in a really tough bind, and I was up against a time constraint, and they used deceptive trade practices, lying to my realtor, in one conversation, and then misdirecting me in another. Blatantly, we have them on recordings where they're just fraudulently, operating. And I don't have the money to go after them because it costs a lot of money to pursue people. And the first time that I tried to get an attorney to stop this process, they promised the world and then just totally fumbled and dropped the ball. It's like they have no respect. They'll say anything at the onset to get a sale or win the deal. And then on the back end, it's like they all just wear like flowered shirts, and they wake up late and they're just hungover, and they're just fucking like, they don't organize or get together notebooks. Like anything you see in the movies or read about in books, they don't do any of that. They like play PlayStation while they're hearing you talk about your case, or they won't prepare a binder for the case. I got my little house that I had bought after college stolen from a company in DFW using the warranty deed method that I talked about. And I tried to do a revocation of trust, and they just didn't honor that, and they just pushed it all through because these people know what they're doing. They run this play a lot. They go after people who are financially unstable. Cricket, come back over here. They go after people who are kind of in tough spots that they know they don't have resources to, combat them, in court and go after them legally. So they go after kind of low-income houses, low-income people. And I'm sorry to admit this, but I was targeted in the situation. They found a legal way to steal a house, and the people that I hired to take care of this didn't even admit at the beginning that they didn't have a litigation team. They had no idea what they were doing. The whole time they just strung out the process that they could have been taking action that would have helped me, and they just sat on their hands, just didn't do anything, and they actually made things worse. But I got my tenant at the time evicted from that property because that document was held up, at the county. So inside the 8.5 by 11 parameters, it's a legal document. outside the 8.5 by 11, nobody knows what they did to obtain that document. There's no notes on that anywhere. Like, nobody knows that. It's hard to prove that. So if you don't spend the money and time documenting the process in which people obtain these legal documents, then you're not going to have a case. But in my case, I actually had recordings to nail these guys. COVID hit. I was getting taken advantage of by a predatory health insurance agency at the same time. So I had this predatory health insurance agency grifting us unknowingly. I thought, that we were even friends and business partners, and they were just absolutely grifting everybody and just lying to everybody while this process was going on. So, I was getting it from both ends, and I didn't really know kind of what I was up against until, a year or two later. With insurance, it's hard to tell kind of what people are doing. It takes like a year for commissions to get paid out, and so it really takes, I would say, a year or two to really see the groundwork of what people are doing. Make sure to be careful who you get in bed with long term if you are in insurance, because it's a long game. Nobody gets an insurance for the short runs. If you're going to be in it successfully for the long term, make sure you know who you're dealing with. I got wrapped up with some neo-Confederate MAGA type people who just lie and manipulate, and they had a history of it. I just wasn't in a position to really have many options doing work with them. And that brings me to my next situation where it's hard to find representation because these guys absolutely just lied about commissions. And I've gone to the Texas Department of Insurance, and they said it's a civil matter, and I've tried to take it to attorneys, and it seems like whenever I talk about these guys being racially discriminative, either the fraud isn't enough money to go after for these attorneys, or nobody really cares about holding people responsible for having hostile work environments that discriminate against people racially. That's been my experience. I tried to report them to the Dallas office where they regulate and oversee discrimination within the workforce, and I'd actually had agents report to me that it was a hostile work environment as far as racial discrimination. So it's just in Texas there's so many laws protecting the good old boy network and these corporatists that there is no power in the hands of the regular people. The attorneys who operate here, they seem to all be kind of in on it. Like, I know a lot of attorneys in other states, and it just isn't like this. It's kind of one of those situations where they've duped, kind of like North Korea, they've like duped a whole region into like a certain ideology and a way of life. They absolutely manipulate politics and the economy here in Texas, and we're not talking about like small dollars here. I mean, Texas is a pretty big deal economically. I'm not talking about Ohio or Wyoming here. DFW alone is the size of Connecticut. The attorneys here seem to have a big problem with the law. Like, they're actually kind of like I mentioned in my short, they're like little Roy Cohn wannabes, and Trumpism kind of emboldened all this. These multinational corporations were coming after me for debt that I already had signed resolution agreements with third parties that had been countersigned by these multinational corporations. They came after me in court at my peak times when I was trying to make money. That's why I feel like I was targeted, and I had to represent myself pro se. I made shorts about this in the past. I spent like a year and a half representing myself after I got my house taken. I got my wealth taken from this health insurance agency. I got a house taken from this, boiler room real estate company in DFW. And then the debt that I accrued from that, they tried to come after me for that, even though I had consolidated it. Finally, at the end of the court case, the last one where I won, the judge was asking the attorney, why did you bring this case against him? And the attorneys just kind of laugh and blush, but it's not that big a deal to anybody. Like, they're trying to dissolve the middle class, and they're trying to turn our constitutional republic and our social democracy into a Christo-fascist theocracy. And these billionaires in Texas are the ones pushing all this shit. They're the ones like paying off Clarence Thomas and corrupting the Supreme Court. They're the ones who fund a lot of this chicanery that we're seeing from MAGA. I think it's an insult to our intelligence. I would be a better attorney than most any attorney I've come in contact with. And, you know, that just feels like a waste that I've, you know, lived this long without the goal of being an attorney. You know, if I make it through all this Trumpism and if I, you know, save myself, you know, financially and all that stuff, I'm absolutely getting a law degree. I'm gonna fight for people who actually need it, because the attorneys here only represent people with tons of money. That's all they do. The cops, they only protect corporations' interests and land. They only protect people with money. So the cops aren't there to protect the you know, lower socioeconomic rungs. They're there to, you know, police them and throw them in jail. Simple as that. And they're there to protect corporate interests. So cops here are not in the best interests of the general population, and the attorneys here are not in the best interests of the general population. And it seems like the courts want to be fair. I'm sure there's, you know, good and bad judges everywhere, but at first glance, I thought it was the court systems, and it very well may be the whole court system. But after further review, it's actually the officers of the courts operating within the court system that corrupt the court system. I believe the court system is probably pretty legit. I don't think there's any money in paying, you know, staff to kind of look after all this grift and malfeasance coming from attorneys. And I think the people at the top here condone it, so nothing ever gets done. Attorneys attack me frivolously in court. I've had them misrepresent me. I've had them underrepresent me. I've had them lie to me. I've had them give them money back to me because they've done such an awful job. Some of them admitted that they've done awful jobs. I have friends who are attorneys in other states, and they are great at what they do, and I have utmost respect for them. So I don't think attorneys in general as an occupation are trash. I think there is a general attitude and an expectation and an ideology that they basically embed into the economy here locally in Texas. These officers of the courts do not respect the law. They respect money and they respect corporations, but they do not respect like the common man. We need more advocacy in Texas is what I've seen. So if there's any young folks around the country and they're trying to picking where they want to be and where they want to grow their business, if they have a law degree and they want to practice law in Texas, you're probably not going to get paid very much at the beginning. So hopefully you have some sort of backup or financial support. Make sure to have a backup plan financially before you start sticking up for this, because my guess is there's going to be a lot of people that want to get in your way.